everyone, it's Katrina and welcome back to my channel. So today I have another Q&A video for you all. About a year ago, I did a Q&A video and answered some of your questions about like the college application process, my thoughts about going to Harvard, and all these pre-grad school feels. And I thought it'd be cool to do another Q&A video now that I'm more than halfway through my program, and then do a final one after I graduate and create a little series to just track how I feel and what are my thoughts throughout this journey. So I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who left a question or multiple questions, and I'm going to try my best to get through a bunch of them and actually outline this video because I didn't want to keep rambling on and on. So the first question is, which school are you in? So I'm currently in the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Teacher Education Program, or TEP, and I'm in the history cohort, and I'm currently doing my student teaching, and I'm teaching AP US History. Question number 2. How did you decide on what to study and which program to pick for grad school? So I went into UC Irvine knowing that I wanted to go into the education field, and I've always been thinking about being a teacher. When I first got admitted to UCI, there wasn't an education major available, so I chose psychology and social behavior because that seemed like the closest thing. And then once the education major opened up during my second year, I decided to pick up both of them, so I graduated with a double major. As I was considering grad schools, I knew I wanted to continue in the education field, but I started thinking about counseling. Maybe a little part of me thought about research for a time, teaching, but I eventually committed to teaching, and I knew that I wanted to do a combo program. I knew I wanted to get my master's and teaching credential at the same time, so I was only looking at grad schools that offered the master's degree and the teaching credential. I ended up applying to 4 different programs. I applied to Harvard's program, UCLA, UC Davis's, and Stanford's, and I was just about to submit my application for UC Irvine, but then I got into Davis, and I realized that I wanted to go to Davis more than UCI, so I decided to save myself the application fee, and I didn't end up applying to UC Irvine. For the results, just to be transparent with you all, I got into 2 schools. So I got into Harvard and I got into UC Davis, and on the same day that I got admitted into Harvard, I got waitlisted to UCLA. So for me, like the top 2 were Harvard and UCLA. My family really wanted me to go to UCLA since it was close to home. I really enjoyed the people that I met and the interview I had with UC Davis, but I ended up going with my number 1 choice, which was Harvard. And I eventually got rejected from UCLA like months after I said yes to Harvard. So yeah, those were overall my results. Stanford had 0 chance. So the next question is, did you consider a PhD instead of a master's, and what factors did you consider / help you weight your decision? For me, it was pretty clear that I wanted to do a master's. A professor once told me that a good sign that you're ready for the PhD path, or that the PhD path is the right one for you, is if there is a question that just keeps you up at night, that sparks a fire within you, that you just really feel the need to dive deeper into and research. And for me, there wasn't a question that did that for me. And honestly, when I was involved in research during my senior year and a little bit post-grad, it was kind of dreadful. Like, I don't know, every time I would have to write those papers, I just did not really enjoy it, and so I couldn't imagine doing that for 4 to 5 years. But I'm not closed off to the idea. Like, I think I just wanted to get into the classroom first, and then if, after years, if I notice things or if a question pops up, then maybe that will be the time to go research more and get a PhD. But for now, I think that a master's was really the clear decision for me. I'm sending my app soon for online grad school, and how was your flow different from undergrad? Congratulations on almost submitting, and good luck. There were some big differences between undergrad and grad school for me. For undergrad, I felt like I was always playing it very safe in that I had a pretty hard, like, I'm gonna take 12 academic units, like 3 classes a quarter, and then let myself fill up on extracurriculars. In undergrad, I flew solo for the most part. I did not really consult with like friends or peers to take classes. I would just take whatever I needed. I would go to class. I didn't really study with others, didn't really know people in my classes. My academics were very important, and my extracurriculars were also very important to me, so I definitely prioritized both those things, and I felt like I had a pretty well-rounded schedule. For grad school, it's really different because I really realized that I'm capable of a lot more than I previously thought I was. Before, as a child, teenager, undergrad, I just felt like I was constantly limiting myself and saying like, okay, this is your, zone of proximal development. This is where you can succeed. If you go any more than that, it's just going to be too much for you, right? And you're not going to succeed. And the reason why you're doing well is because you're kind of finding that comfort zone and putting yourself in there. In grad school, I really couldn't stay in that comfort zone because there was just not enough time, and I usually took 12 units, right, as I said. In grad school fall semester, I took 24 units. It was a completely like new, intense schedule for me, but I did it, I conquered it, I was able to get straight A's, and for the first time, I relied on other people. A lot of my friends were in my classes, we had cohort mates, and it was just really nice to see familiar faces in class, and it made class just so much more enjoyable as I'm sitting with my friends. And for the first time, I had a reading group, so we would split up the readings and we would each take turns taking our notes, and that helped immensely. I love the TEP Ethnic Studies reading group, and I felt like I didn't need to sit in front, you know? Before I was like, oh, I always succeed because I sit in the front, I buy my textbooks, I take notes on paper. And I had such a different routine in grad school. I'm constantly taking notes on the computer just to save paper, and it's more efficient and quick and just to have things in one space. I'm not really sitting in the front, although I think it would be better for my own focus and engagement sometimes. I just don't even think I have the time or energy or capacity to be getting involved in like on-campus involvement. So I'm here to, you know, finish the program, take my classes, do my student teaching, but I'm not as concerned about getting involved, which I do regret because I feel like I only have 3 more months of the resources that are available to me, and I just don't think I've even made like a little dent in what is offered here. So there's just not enough time. And another thing, I don't know if this fits within flow, but I think that it's nice because in grad school I see a clear relation between what I'm learning in either my classes or my workshops or student teaching to my future career. So I feel like I'm walking into these spaces looking for things that I can pull and take away with me to use in the future. Whereas in undergrad, I felt like there was just a variety of different things that I was learning, and not everything was directly related to what I would be doing. I think grad school, I'm like reframing the way that I'm walking into these spaces, so it's really cool to just see what I can get out of these things. Next question is, how do you manage to keep your coolness at an all-time high all the time? Thank you, Philip. You too. So the next question is by Karen, and it is, can you bring me back a Harvard shot cup? Ta-da! Whoops, price tag. Ta-da! Oh, good catch. Ta-da! You're welcome. Next question is, I'm going to YISS or Yonsei International Summer School this summer, and I watched your Yonsei video. Thank you. How rigorous were the classes? During my summer at Yonsei, I took 2 classes. I took developmental psychology, which was a major class for me, and then contemporary Korean culture, which was a GE. And they weren't too rigorous, but one thing I do want to point out is that they were inconsistent in their structure and the way they were taught because the 2 professors were from very different parts of the world. So my psychology professor was from California, so her teaching style, the way her class was run, was very familiar to what I was used to, whereas my Korean contemporary culture professor was from Korea, but he is currently a professor at a university in Singapore. So I'm not exactly sure if the classes are very different, but I felt like the way he ran his class was a little bit different than I was used to. So I felt like I had a slightly harder time in that class, and I was going to office hours a lot more. I would probably recommend taking 2 courses instead of 3 if you still want to, you know, have some fun while you're there and not be too into studying. So even with those 2 classes, I really spent my weekdays studying, and then I let myself have fun and go out on the weekends. Hope you have a good time at Yonsei. Have fun! So the next question is, how do you know if you're doing something that you're most passionate about? I really like this question, and it got me thinking because I actually didn't really know how to answer it. For me, if I get really excited thinking or talking about something, it's usually a good sign that I'm passionate about it. And if it consumes my mind as I'm doing random things like, you know, getting ready to sleep or showering or walking to school, and just these ideas pop up and I get really excited about it, that's how I know that this is something that I'm passionate about. For example, sometimes as I'm showering, I'll think of like lesson plan ideas for school, and I get really excited, and I have to tell Ryan right away. When I'm planning my family parties and the games, like those are things that I will stay up late thinking about and doing. YouTube ideas, sometimes I'll just be like walking and I think about an idea and I get really excited, or I think about a brand that I want to ask to collaborate with and I get really excited. I feel like because I don't like staying up late, if I'm staying up late to do something that is not like due or an assignment, that's usually a good sign that I'm passionate about it because I don't like staying up late to do things. So yeah, and maybe it'll be different for other people, but that's just how I kind of think about things that I'm passionate about. So the next question is, what was the scariest part about moving so far away? I feel like for me, many of the things that would have been scary, like being alone here or moving to a new place, not knowing anyone, being in a possibly rocky long distance relationship, all of that were not scary because Ryan came with me. So a huge, huge, huge thank you to Ryan. I always tell him that was an ugly heart. Huge thank you to Ryan for coming with me. I really feel like because he came with me, so many of the things that would have been scary and concerning for me and my family were alleviated. So now when I think about the scariest thing is probably being far away from my family and not being able to immediately be there if something happens, and to just not always be in the loop of what's going on, because the only way I'll know what's going on is if someone decides to text or call me, so I don't find out as fast as I would if I were there. And I just feel like because of that, I get worried, what if something happens? Like, it's gonna take us a while to get there and it's gonna cost money and stuff like that. So I think that's probably been the most concerning thing for me. Next question is, how is the class culture like at Harvard, and did you experience any culture shock? So I have a lot of notes for this question. I feel like at the education school, people that I've met are really nice and they're very open to helping and engaging with one another. And I've noticed and appreciated how much people are willing to share in class and how much we learn from like each other. Even in classes where it doesn't seem like you might have a connection with, you know, the topic or the material, I've really appreciated how much I've been able to connect my own experiences and my own story with what we're learning about, and that really just enriches like the learning experience and makes it so much more powerful. I feel like we derive most of our learning from each other and the text rather than our professor just telling us what's going on, because rarely did I have professors just lecturing. I only had one class where it was like an undergrad course, so there was like a mix of undergrad and grad school students, and it wasn't in the education school where the professor would be lecturing the whole time. And that brought me back to undergrad vibes. But in the grad school, like, we're constantly getting up, doing activities, group discussions, breakout groups, to the point where I remember like in one of our classes, we would have to get up multiple times during those 3-hour classes. And we were really tired from like being at our school sites the whole day. So we were just like, please stop making us get up, like just lecture for 3 hours. In our classes, we're definitely forced to discuss more and to participate and share our ideas. And it made me feel really anxious because I felt like my ideas were so, I don't know, like basic compared to my peers, and I felt like I didn't really have so much to add to our conversations. So that was definitely a source of anxiety, but it was really nice to see like some of my friends and peers felt the same way, and that we were able to be vulnerable and open to admitting that, yeah, like this is how we feel. But although you think that, like some people would be like, hey, like what you said there was really great, and you know, like it feels so good when you're saying something and people like snap, because in grad school, like people snap a lot when they agree with what you say. And let me tell you, the validation, the good feeling that comes when you hear like you say something and then is in the background. So thank you to everyone who has told me that they appreciate something that I've said in class or that they've snapped for me, because it really takes like a lot for me to be able to share, and I just really appreciate like the external validation. So as for culture shock, I definitely experienced a positive culture shock with just the different demographics of students, peers that I have here with me. For those of you who don't know, I come from a part of LA that is very, how to say, like monolithic. It's like an ethnic enclave where everybody kind of comes from the same background, right? Most of the people that I grew up with, our families were Chinese or Vietnamese, and our parents were from Vietnam, and they escaped the Vietnam War. They came as refugees, and that's kind of like the narrative that every family, all my friends have. So for me, like that was what I was used to. And coming here, like I'm working with students and peers from so many different parts of the world and from the different parts of the US as well. So my students, like I have so many students from the West Indies, Cape Verde, Jamaica, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, Algeria, Morocco, Bangladesh, just so many different places. And when I first saw the roster of our students, there were so many names that I just never heard of before. And that just really was kind of like culture shock to me, because like I was just used to the names like Brandon, Kevin, Ryan, Brian, those kind of things back home. So seeing these different names was really amazing to me. And even in my cohort, we're all from the United States, but we're from such different parts of the United States. So it's really cool to see what was different in our experiences growing up, what was the same in our schooling experiences, and just to learn from each other there. I think of all the things that I've gained, I feel like that is the number one thing that I'm grateful for being able to go to Harvard and live in Cambridge is to work with such a diverse group of people. I don't know if I would have another opportunity to live outside of that specific part of LA that I'm from, and so I just feel really grateful to have this opportunity to be able to live here and experience such a different part of America. So I guess kind of related to that, a huge fear that I had going into teaching, coming to Harvard, was how am I going to connect to students or friends if I don't know anything about where they're coming from? And I think this was definitely a flaw in my own mentality, that I was so fixated on potential differences, right? Like, well, I don't know so much about this ethnicity or this part of the world or this language. And I felt like that would be a huge disadvantage for me working with a group of students who I wasn't familiar with their culture and background. But I realized that there are so many more similarities, and the differences are a great opportunity to learn from each other, because whereas I thought that, oh, everybody knows my narrative because I come from a place where everyone has such a similar background story, it was the common narrative for me. But coming to this place and sharing my story, I'm so shocked to see how surprised people are that my family had this kind of journey, and for so many of them, they had no idea about the boat people and stuff like that. So it's been a really great opportunity to share my story, my family's story, and to learn about others' family stories as well. This question: hi, do you also feel very disappointed when you study for this test, but then you get a very bad score and you lose all motivation in your body and end up sulking? If you have experienced this, how do you cope up? So when I read this, I immediately thought to two instances. One was right after my stats midterm in my senior year of college, and another was right after my health psychology midterm, also in my senior year of college. I just felt so discouraged and disappointed because I did feel like I studied so hard and I felt like I was confident, and then I came out of there feeling so shitty to the point where I was crying, right? So I think my advice would be to, one, sit in those negative, sad, disappointed emotions, and to cry if you need to cry, to do whatever you need to do to let those feelings out. Two is to, maybe still sulk, but as you're sulking, reflect on what you could have done differently maybe, and come up with an action plan to bounce back. So just think, like, it's normal to feel so upset when you've studied so hard and you felt confident walking in and the result is just completely opposite. But just try not to beat yourself up over it, and to be sad, but also find a way to cheer yourself up that day. That day, after that health psychology midterm, I actually came home and filmed a video because I knew that that would make me feel better. So out of that day came my study tips video. So if you know that there's something that would make you feel better, whether it's turning on music, eating something, I would treat yourself to that, right? Because you did work hard. And then after that, come up with an action plan of what you can do better next time. So the next question is, how do you feel about going back home? So I definitely feel mixed feelings about going back home. I feel like on the one hand, I'm really excited to be back with my family, my friends, to be able to see them more often. On the other hand, I feel like I fear that I'm going to be in this post-grad slump like I was after undergrad, where I'm just going to feel so unproductive and unmotivated and lazy. There's something just about home that makes me feel that type of way sometimes. So I feel like I'm excited to, start my real career, get a job, and do all that. And then at the same time, I know that I'm going to miss being a student here despite how stressful it is sometimes, just the independence, just the routine, living with Ryan, looking forward and not looking forward to it. I don't know, a lot of feelings. So the last question is, who is your favorite Australian cousin? That's a toughie. I'm going to have to go with definitely not Darren. Just kidding, you're all right. You're all right, mate. So that wraps up this Q&A video. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. I really love answering your questions and hearing from you all. And I want to thank you all for making it to the end. I know this was a long video, but I really appreciate you all for supporting me and following me throughout my journey. And I wish you all the best on your own journey too. Yeah, so please leave a comment if you'd like to. I would love to read anything you all have to say. And I hope to see you all in my next Q&A video after I graduate.